Hello, everyone. Welcome to our 9th episode of Community Talks. Today, we are going to discuss a very important topic to every parent and child. Healthy eating is not just about fueling the body. It's also about nourishing the minds. It's about empowering children how to develop healthier eating habits, and it's about empowering children to make the right choices. Today, we welcome Farah Al-Helu, a registered dietitian, and today we are going to go through several questions. We're going to open the mic for the attendees to ask questions, share recipes, healthy, nutritious recipes with us. So I'm very excited to have you, Dr. Farah, and let's go ahead and start our discussion today. The first thing that comes to any parent mind is the guilt. Am I giving enough nutrition to my kids? Are they eating enough, not eating enough? So what would be your advice to most of the parents here?
Sure. First and foremost, it's a pleasure to be here today with you. Thank you for inviting me. And it's a very important topic that will ultimately differ from family to family, culture to culture. There are so many factors that can impact, how we approach our child's health, and it can even differ from child to child. So the guilt, I think, is something that, parents feel and will continue to feel, especially, if they've got kids who are picky eaters, kids with certain dietary requirements, medical conditions, allergies. So we definitely need to cater. Now, the guilt, again, can be associated to different factors. Now, ultimately, it's, we have to better understand why are we feeling that guilt. Is it because we feel like we're not doing enough? Is it because there are factors beyond our control? Sometimes, we have a plan in mind and we want to implement this within our family, but then they're going to dictate what works and what doesn't. So sometimes I think we really need to let go of these expectations, go with their cues, but ultimately, we have, let's say, the foundations that we want to set in terms of maybe a routine, in terms of foods that we bring to the house and what we don't bring to the house. But ultimately, I think it's really important for parents, when we do feel that guilt, we question why are we feeling that guilt, and be really realistic in terms of our expectations within ourselves, and talk about it with our spouse, family members, friends, experts when needed. So that guilt will continue. We go through phases, but it's really setting the expectations, involving the children as well, depending on their age, and seeking support and expert advice when needed.
Beautiful. Sometimes parents are trying to push certain foods and nutrients into children's meals, and we use certain ways. So bribing is one way. Sometimes pushing the kid to finish your plate, and this is like a very common thing in different cultures. You have to finish your plate. You have to eat it all. Or if you eat it, I'm gonna give you this. There is a reward, and incentives to eating. What do you say to that?
It's really important that we keep in mind that, the skills and the behaviors, the words that we say to our kids, and the skills that we teach them, these can be carried with them for a long, long time. And of course, we try our best. No doubt, sometimes, we learn from our mistakes, but it's really important when, especially when it revolves around food, that we are mindful about what we say, because oftentimes you find teenagers or adults who are struggling with their relationship with food. Often it stems back to childhood. And often it can be because of maybe something that a family member might have said, a friend might have said, a teacher might have said. So it's, we really need to be very conscious about the messages and the words that we say. I think many of us grew up, with our parents telling us, other kids don't have food, you need to finish what's on your plate. But ultimately that is, it's not the right message that we want to send to kids. They help either, we involve them if they're younger, in terms of when we plate the food, knowing, expecting what the child will eat and adding seconds when needed. If they're more, teenagers, I think they can pace their own meal quantities and meals. So it's, and then the bribing with food, it's super common. We often tell our kids, eat your vegetables or eat whatever it is, your fish or whatnot, and then we will give you the candy. But, we have to distinguish between those. It can be, if you do this, you will get this, or if you behave, you'll get the treat. Again, that's, we're establishing these foundations and how that child will view food right now in the immediate term, but then down the line as a reward. And so, it can have kind of a backlash effect. So the bribe, ideally we don't want to bribe them, but let's be realistic here. We don't want it to revolve around food. Right. Okay. Ultimately, what works for one child might not work for other children. And again, we have to be realistic, but it's, that bribing with food is what we want to avoid. The relationship with food really starts at an early age. And yes, no two children will be the same. It's how do we approach each child? And so it's really developing these key messages at a young age, and that relationship with food that can really manifest sometimes down the line when they develop sometimes disordered eatings because of key messages. Family members, parents, sometimes from a loving place, might have said, but it might have been taken in a wrong way.
Yeah,
correct.
That
makes sense. Yeah.
They say you have to introduce a food 12 to 17 times before the child take the step forward and try it. And this is a very interesting fact. Normally, parents would be impatient and they would try to, try different methods to push certain food to their children where just be patient, try 12 to 17 times, it's okay. At some point, the child will be intrigued to try, the broccoli or try something like the spinach, but eventually it will happen. I think it works for certain kids, and since the children, all preschoolers are explorers, so if you would ask the child, touch it, feel it, smell it, first it becomes like an experience, and then over time, maybe they would accept it. So as you mentioned, every child is different and parents need to try different ways. Going back to the link between the food and the experience, dinner routine is very important. This is the time where families are together. And normally when you're driving back from work back to home, the main question is what's for dinner, at what time you're going to be there. So dinner time is a precious time. Any advice around the dinner table where we can use this time not only to connect with our children, create memorable experiences where the child can take away some good habits, and these good habits can continue for the future.
Yes, absolutely. It's, whether it's dinner, whether it's a breakfast meal, whether it's a lunch meal, whatever it is, but at least having some form of routine, and ideally at least once a day where the entire family does get together, and you want it to be a positive experience. And if, we have to also keep in mind that sometimes when we're stressed, we subconsciously, that energy is going to reflect on the dining table amongst our children, if they're not eating, and, we might get a bit tense and whatnot. So it's, and parents, as much as possible, also need to remember that they are the role models, okay? So they're like sponges, and they're observing everything we say and we do and what we eat. So, it's likely, not always the case, but it's likely that kids will imitate what the parents are doing. And so, we want to show them that we are not only eating this nutrient-dense foods, but we're actually enjoying it. And over time, some kids might reach out for it directly. Some kids might, over time, when they're constantly exposed to these foods, reach out for it, whether it's 10, 20 times. So it's, role modeling, kind of practicing as a family, maybe also that mindfulness, mindful eating. As adults, we struggle with that sometimes, let alone kids. They're often distracted, they're on, their screens. So making sure that when we do create that routine, we say no screens at the table.
Right.
Those positive messages and positive reinforcements is really important. So it's what we're offering on the table, maybe even taking it a step back, having them in the kitchen prepare the meal with us, if time permits, if, sometimes we're rushed, we want to get the food on the table, but planning ahead, knowing maybe in advance, 2, 3, 5 days in advance, what we're going to be having. Some people do it on the weekends, some people might do it the day before, but sometimes planning ahead, having kids be involved in that preparation stage, which can really help, can cause the mom some anxiety sometimes, but it can help. And then at the dinner table, making sure everybody's there on time, no screens, everybody's bringing in their positive energy, and ultimately really parents involving their kids, discussions, and role modeling in terms of what they're putting on their plates as well. And if they're serving the kid, it's, again, depending what age, it's being realistic with the portions. If you've got toddlers or maybe younger kids who are making a mess, just taking a few deep breaths. It's okay if they make the mess, but it's, they sense that energy, and it's what we're saying to them and how we're acting that can really, to them, make a big difference in terms of enjoying their time with us or with the family at the dinner table.
Very good point, because sometimes families divide the dinner between different family members, like toddlers would have dinner separate and then grown-ups separate, but it is very healthy to bring everyone together around the food table. And habits bring happiness. So if the child knows that every day at 6 p.m. I'm going to have dinner, then that brings some peace of mind.
Yeah.
So that is also related to the mind health, part of the food that we are intaking. How about sometimes we have picky eaters in the family, and moms and dads tend to create, cook a different dish for every child based on their needs or their likes. Do you support this?
Look, it's what works for each family, okay? So it's the kind of support that you have in the house. It's the kind of time that you have. Sometimes we do have to cater to their needs, sorry to say. But if we can ensure that they're getting in the nutrients that they need, and by nutrients, we want to focus on making sure they're getting their healthy fats, let's say, their protein, their, some form of veggies. So honestly, even if they tend to gear towards the same foods, yes, we want to diversify their palate. We want to diversify their diet. And remember that they go through phases. I've had my daughter who used to eat anything and everything, but then, so she stopped eating some of the foods that she liked. Mm-hmm. And that caused me some stress and worry. But then I focused on, okay, so what is it that she currently likes? I know that these are quite nutrient dense. Let me continue to offer these while trying to introduce some new things at the same time.
What do you say to parents who prepare different dish for each child based on their needs or based on their demands for dinner, let's say?
Yeah, thank you. I think, as we were saying, it's sometimes what works for one family might not work for another family. So sometimes, there is that luxury of being able to having the time and the means to prepare different dishes. And, they go through phases. Children will go through phases where sometimes they love a food and then they hate the food, and you have no idea why. So it's, if the mom can guarantee, or the family member can guarantee, that child is eating these nutrient-dense foods, even if it's the same foods. Yes, ultimately, we do want the diversity and the variety. But at that point in time, if all they eat is, 5, 6, 7 foods, but we know that these are foods that are more nutrient-dense, then that's fine, okay? But then in parallel, we continue to try to introduce some of these other, colorful foods, maybe in a more engaging, fun way, the way we chop, the way we cut foods, the way we offer it, and again, role modeling it. So it's, we go by the child's cue. if they are, let's say, more geared towards foods that aren't so nutrient dense or what we call healthy, then that's where, the stress and anxiety can come into play. And that's where we do our best to offer, whatever it is that they like. For example, chicken nuggets, okay? For the most part, children do like chicken nuggets. And rather than buying maybe the more frozen, processed ones, we try and make the ones at home, okay? So it's trying to imitate what they would like that's more processed and more, packaged. What can we do at home? And there's an abundance of recipes online, easy access, even if it's packaged foods. We empower ourselves, and we'll discuss this shortly, in terms of reading the label, the ingredient list, whatever we can prepare at home. Homemade food, for the most part, will always be healthier than processed foods, as long as, we are ensuring that the sugar that we, add in, vegetable oils, etc., are kept to a minimum. So picky eaters, yes. I think every family would admit to having a picky eater. What's really important as well is not to compare between kids. Your brother, your sister is eating this. Why aren't you eating it? You're so picky. We want to avoid these labels. We want to avoid comparing to, their friends, their cousins, their sibling, and, just going by with their cue, and continuing in parallel to introduce them to foods that we know are more nutrient dense, encouraging them, talking about this food to them, maybe even planting this food at home, taking them to a garden to pick up these, vegetables, for example, talking about it. If they're older, we talk about it, how it was maybe, how the benefits that it has, let's say, to hair health, skin health, the nails, whatever it is that your child will be, their eyes will glow. But introducing them to why this particular food that you're trying to get them to eat more of is important and will nourish their body.
Beautiful. So nourish their body. Sometimes the children are not eating at all, and sometimes they're eating too much. So is there a link between their growth and the food and their state?
Yeah, absolutely. And, we know that in infancy and in the adolescent years, there are, two stages of life that really demand a lot of energy, basically. So naturally, a child's appetite will be quite high.
Yeah.
Now, the rate of growth, during childhood, let's say preschool, school years, obviously they're still growing, but the rate, again, is not as drastic as infancy and teenage years. So their appetite might naturally fluctuate, okay? But also keeping in mind, sometimes what can impact our hunger signals is the food that we've eaten, maybe the meal before. Because if we are consuming, and this applies to adults as well, a very carbohydrate-rich, sugar-rich meal, naturally our sugar levels will increase, and then insulin, a hormone, to help control blood sugar levels, is going to increase as well. So when we have quite a bit of carbs, sugars, our blood sugar levels will rise drastically, insulin will rise, and then we'll have that drop. So with that drop, sometimes the child might feel tired, they might start to feel, like they're hungry again, they'll get these cravings. So it's going back, first and foremost to ensure that what we provide in that meal, when you've got the protein, when you substitute more of the sugar-rich foods or even processed, refined carbohydrates with more of the high fiber, like whole grain, whole wheat, that can help promote more of a balanced increase in blood sugar levels, and therefore, and again, this applies to adults, and therefore more of a sustained, let's say, feeling of fullness, as opposed to, I'm hungry, and it's because what did they eat? What did they eat before? So that's one factor. But of course, sometimes it's boredom, sometimes it's they're frustrated, or the food is there, so they just want to nibble on it. So it's really understanding for each child, what is it that's triggering these sensations of cravings or hunger?
Beautiful. So now we talked about the house, the dinner table. Let's go back to the grocery store. So grocery shopping is a fun activity. Some families do it collectively, some families do it separately. So what are the things that you encourage parents to do when they are grocery shopping, and what to look for?
I mean, I tend to take my almost 5-year-old daughter. Sometimes I do regret it because she starts to pick up things that I don't want her to pick up. But it's good to take them. Okay, because then they can help you put in the apples, pack the broccoli or whatever it is. So it's good exposure and they feel involved and they feel empowered. Okay, now, yes, at one point you might have to compromise. Kids are smart. So yeah, okay, you want a treat, maybe get one treat this time. But then the problem is if you're going almost daily to the market and the treat becomes daily. But if it's weekends or limited days a week, then you have to compromise. But it's good to involve them in the process of grocery shopping and cooking. And then, we need to empower ourselves. And we have a few slides here. Reading the nutrition label is so important because that's how we make informed choices in terms of what is it that we are buying. Yes, we know that we want to gear more towards the fresh foods that are not in a package, but let's be realistic, okay? And nowadays, alhamdulillah, we have an abundance of options that we can compare. There are the more let's say processed foods that we want to stay away from, but then there are sometimes alternatives that are made with what we call cleaner ingredients. So the nutrition label is key and the ingredients list as well. Always, let's say if it's maybe something like a cereal bar, okay, or just maybe a box of cereal, just look at the serving size, okay? And then sometimes people obsess about the calories, and I think we really want to move away from that very calorie-focused perspective. But do look at, one thing I would really encourage parents to look at, especially when choosing foods for their kids, is the sugars and the added sugars, because we know that sugars are found naturally in foods like fruits, for example, different types of sugars, of course, lactose and dairy. But then it's the added sugars that we really want to avoid, Rima, right? So it's what additional sugars were added to make this food taste better. And if you keep in mind that about 1 teaspoon of sugar is the equivalent to about 4 or 5 grams, sometimes there's hidden sugar. Okay, we know obviously something like cereals that is full of colors, no doubt will have a bit more sugar, as opposed to sometimes something like orange juice or even ketchup. You wouldn't expect that there's natural sugar or even added sugar, for example, in the ketchup, okay? And sometimes you got the child piling on the ketchup, but realistically, it could have, 1 tablespoon could have the equivalent of 1 to 2 teaspoons of sugar. So it's really the sugar that we want to focus on. And then when, if you see that it has added sugars or total sugars, maybe 15 grams or 20 grams, that's equivalent to about 4 or 5 teaspoons of sugar. So this is one thing that we really want to focus on. It was just to show 2 examples of things like fruit yogurt, for example. Yeah, so 16 grams of added sugars. Okay, so if a child were to eat, let's say this bar, actually it's not yogurt, this is more of a maybe cereal bar, but sometimes we think it's healthy, it's got the strawberry, marketing can be a very powerful tool. But then 16 grams, that's about 3 teaspoons of sugar. Okay? So it's sometimes the foods that we think are pretty healthy because of marketing, because they have, certain fruits or vegetables on the label, or they're labeled in a certain way, they can have hidden sugars. And then also the next slide, sometimes packaged foods do have certain additives, preservatives that we do want to avoid. There's a few lists over here. So, it's ultimately we want to make better options and better decisions for ourselves and for our family members. We don't want to obsess too much. It's, what changes can we make in the short term and in the long term? If, our kids are constantly snacking on, for example, something like, in this case, the cereal bar, is there any other alternative with lower sugar that's not as processed, with cleaner ingredients? The best option would be, can we make it at home?
Yeah.
Okay. Are we going to guarantee the child's going to like it? We don't know, but we can try and then involve them in the process of making it. It might encourage them. So it's these, we have to be, and that goes back to the guilt initially and the pressure and the stress. It's, how can we reduce what we are feeling and, approach it from a positive perspective? And how can we empower ourselves while involving our kids, empowering them? As a family, we're making these healthier choices together. And again, depending on the age of the child, it's going to differ. But fruit juice is something else that, I'm not a fan of.
Why? We have one today.
It's, sometimes out of just good intentions, it might be the only fruit that the child is having.
Yeah.
Okay, I'd rather it be fresh or maybe in a form of a smoothie. as opposed to something that's packaged. But just keeping in mind that it's a concentrated form of sugar. What you can do is maybe dilute it. Okay, so even if you know that your child's gonna have the whole one, maybe just, put aside half of it and dilute it.
Yeah.
So it's what better options can we offer until we wean our child off of this? Anything else that we wanted to show over
So we
here?
went shopping to make this a bit more realistic. The lunchbox, everybody knows it has to be colorful. So we put here some healthy choices and fun, easy to eat. Carrots, blueberries, raspberries, and cucumbers. Whole meal bread.
Yeah.
So can you
Yes.
just give us some advice on how to prepare a better and more fun lunchbox? Is this okay? Chocolate pudding?
Chocolate pudding. You tell me, how much sugar does it have in there?
Okay. I'm getting old, so I can't.
Oh, it's quite small actually.
Yeah,
So this is per serving size of 85 grams. The total sugars is 15 grams, so 11 grams of added sugar. 11 grams, so it's about 2 teaspoons of sugar.
Okay.
Okay.
So it's a no.
So, what I would recommend is even if we just offer plain yogurt, maybe add some honey to it.
Yeah.
Or maybe just mash some raspberries or strawberries.
Yeah.
And maybe add a little bit of honey. Okay. So it gives a bit more sweet taste, but it's something that can be a substitute. Okay. Or chocolate pudding, something that we make at home.
Yeah. One of my favorites is Greek yogurt
Yeah.
with peaches. Like slicing peaches inside. So Greek yogurt, yes?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Greek yogurt, an amazing source of probiotics. We wanted to talk about gut health. We'll do that shortly. But, we want to nourish a child's gut health because that improves their immunity. That improves even, their sleep, their mental well-being. So gut health is super, super important. Greek yogurt is a fantastic source. So is Lebanese. They're both great sources of protein as well. So we really want to guarantee in a lunchbox that you've got the fiber, you've got some form of healthy fat, and you've got the protein, okay? And of course, these will all offer a variety of vitamins and minerals. So protein, for example, you've got your yogurt, you've got your milk, maybe cheese. Again, avoiding the processed cheese. The colors, the fiber comes from the fruit, whole fruit, vegetables. We can chop it and cut it in all sorts of different ways, engaging ways. And then substituting, just making these substitutes. If we put pasta, white pasta or white bread, trying to mix in, whole grain or substitute for whole grain. Pasta might be easier. You can mix white pasta and brown pasta initially or whole grain pasta with some sauce. A child might not necessarily notice it. Bread might be a bit more noticeable. But then it's, we want to really stay away from the white refined carbs and switch to more of the fiber because that can help a child feel full for longer. It improves their gut health. Fiber feeds our good gut bacteria. And, will prevent those crazy sugar increases and drops. So, when we look at our child's lunchbox, we think of the protein, the fiber, and then the healthy fats. So, healthy fats, we think, obviously nuts and seeds, but many schools, I think all schools won't allow nuts, rightfully so because of potential risk of allergies. But something like, for example, avocados, even eggs, chicken has, some fats as well, but eggs would be a good source. Of course, your yogurt as well. Like I mentioned, avocados, olive oil. If if we're doing a salad or even broccoli, maybe adding a bit of olive oil. But healthy fats is really important for cognitive development. Brain development and cognitive development. So protein and, so we need to ensure that we are within the lunchbox incorporating these main components.
Very nice. I have a little recipe to share for a dressing. Normally, our sandwiches are dry. Salad may not be so much fun. So I tried this, actually not me, my daughter, and it's becoming one of our daily routines with sandwiches, with salad and all. So tahini sauce is becoming very popular now, just like sunflower seeds, apple cider. If you mix them together, you get a beautiful
Dressing.
Dressing, which is a little bit like a Caesar-ish dressing, which like have very nice consistency and very nice flavors. And then another salad that we can make at home and then prep it for dinner and can be a lunch, easy lunch for kids. Grilled chicken, lentils, a little bit of cheese and kale. So this, I think, a full meal. It has everything, it's very delicious because it has all these nutrients and a little bit of this dressing. Then it's beautiful. So we will share recipes, and if anyone of the audience have some fun, simple recipes that you can share, and we can add it to our recap later. Today we have social media, we have open-minded kids. They talk about food. I feel food is becoming the new fashion, and there are many trends, and I see a lot of people are now cooking at home, so homemade food is becoming the trend now. All these are healthy and good habits that we are experiencing now. Children are becoming more aware about their nutrition, their body, and their health. So sustainable food is the same thing, is becoming a trend. What of these trends do you encourage people to follow? What you don't? Like plant-based food currently is a big trend. So can you give us a few of the new trends and the benefits or disadvantages?
Sure. I mean, the trends I think that are being targeted towards adults are very similar to what's being targeted towards children, but sometimes they bring in famous characters, cartoon characters, or sports, famous sports players, etc. So, whether first and foremost, it's to understand, does this child have any certain dietary needs, special dietary needs? So again, if they do have maybe an allergy to, for example, cow's milk protein, and if they can't tolerate any types of animal-based protein, goat, sheep, etc., then yes, we do have to resort to plant-based. Okay, so we want to avoid, we want to educate our children about these trends, and ultimately, from an adult's perspective, though sometimes they might not necessarily listen to that, but to really make, to try and control first and foremost what they are exposed to on social media. We might have, a certain capacity to do that, but to really provide, our perspective in terms of making informed decisions, and then understanding why do they want to go vegan, or why, I had my daughter say, I want to go pescatarian, but I don't want to eat fish. I'm like, so what do you mean then? What is it that you're going to eat? Sometimes they hear these words and, their friend is doing it, so they want to do it as well. So to understand their motive, okay, and to engage in that dialogue. As you mentioned, plant-based, and vegan is super popular, but if this is something that the family is following, then you don't want to, it's something that they've chosen to do, but you kind of make sure, you provide them, from my perspective, as a dietitian, nutritionist, to provide them with the education, with alternatives where they can get all their nutritional needs from. Take into consideration children will require additional or different nutrients compared to adults. So to ensure that, their needs are still being met despite going on a plant-based, vegan, whatever it is, diet. Now, there are trends, okay? My daughter recently told me, I don't know, some cookie trend or whatnot. And it's okay. They saw it, they enjoyed it, she ordered it. Okay, and then what? I gave in at one point, and then she forgot about it, So sometimes we do have to compromise, but ultimately, if it's a trend that they feel so strongly about, it's really, and we know that is not going to be beneficial for them for whatever reason, particularly their health, physical health or mental health, then, as parents, it's our duty to provide that sense of education, awareness, and guidance. And then to reach out to professionals. If that trend becomes a bit of an extreme, then we have to reach out to a professional who can help provide that additional expert guidance as well. So, and again, dealing with teenagers is going to be different than dealing with, preschoolers, etc. So trends, I think we can't avoid them. We can try and control what they're being exposed to an extent, but it's really understanding their motive behind this trend? Is it because everybody's doing it? Their friends are doing it, or there was a famous, I don't know, football star who was doing, was advocating for it. So I think we do what we can in terms of just providing that guidance and education.
The most important reason why parents care about food is how good it is for their well-being, physically and mentally. So we spoke about the physical part and now the mental. A lot of discussions with psychologists recently, a lot of research shows a direct correlation between the mental health and the gut health.
Yeah.
So can you give us some information?
Yes, absolutely. And the field of gut health, which I'm very passionate about, gut health really impacts so many conditions that go beyond just the gut. And even in pregnancy, we can, what the mother eats and what she's exposed to during pregnancy can impact the child, their genetic expression, but also there's been research to show that there's some translocation of the mom's gut bacteria or gut microbiome to the baby. But then for the most part, it happens during birth. And then, when through breastfeeding, and then what we are introducing, the first foods we introduce in terms of solids. So all of these do have an impact. So for example, there is research to show that babies born via cesarean section, they are inoculated, or the bacteria that they gain is more from the environment. And that could potentially predispose a child to more allergies, asthma, down the line. It could, and this is what research shows. And then breastfeeding, of course, we try and advocate for it as much as possible because it further continues to nourish the gut. And then again, as I mentioned, in terms of what we're feeding the child in terms of first food, the fiber, the healthy fats. So the gut is linked to mental well-being. It's linked to immunity. If a child is constantly getting sick, we know that with the start of the academic year, quite a bit is going on, a lot of different infections. So if a child frequently gets sick, yes, we want to strengthen their immune system, but 70-80% of our immune system is coming from that gut lining, from our gut. Yeah. Okay, so we need to think gut health. Okay, what's going to impact gut health in a negative way? It's foods that are processed, high sugar foods. And then what's going to nourish it is the probiotic-rich foods. It's the prebiotic-rich foods, such as foods high in fiber. There's no harm in supplementing, a child with probiotics, for example. Omega-3 fats are really important as well for immunity. So, anytime a child is getting sick, quite often we really need to think of gut health. And going back to your question about that gut, there is that gut-brain axis. And a lot of children who have been diagnosed with ADHD, children on the autism spectrum, there is research to show that there is some form of gut microbiome imbalances as well. Okay, and gut microbiome can also impact, how a child's feeling in terms of even adults. Adults with anxiety and depression, their gut microbiome is also, there's some form of what we call dysbiosis, an imbalance in good versus not so good bacteria. So looking at the gut is super, super important. We test for the gut microbiome to better understand what is in there, how is it acting, how could it be impacting health. Children with autoimmune conditions, children, as I mentioned, with ADHD, children who are getting sick quite often, gut health is an important component when we address these conditions. I've got an image here, a kind of, inspiration and guidance on how to build a healthy lunchbox. So just examples of veggies, foods rich in protein, healthy fats, carbohydrate-rich foods. So that could be used, as a source of guidance and inspiration.
Farah, you've been generous enough to give some discount vouchers. Can you tell us more about what we are offering our audience today?
Sure. So as we were just talking about the gut health test, which can be used for adults and children, and sometimes the way healthcare is moving is really towards that personalized approach, but also for prevention, right? So even, what we want to do with our children is we want to optimize their health. It's what else can we do to promote their health and well-being? And nowadays, with all the wearables that adults are wearing, it's giving us more insights. We're collecting more data. And through gut health testing, it can really help give a deeper insight as to what's happening at the gut level. So it's, it's a kit that we send to the person's house. They just do a stool swab and we pick it up and, in a few weeks' time, we can really help. We get a very comprehensive report in terms of what this individual's microbiome looks like, and then what changes can they make to their diet? Do they need any specific probiotic supplements that can really help improve their gut health, and in turn, improve whether it's their immune system, overall health and well-being. So it's just deeper insights that we gain in terms of the gut microbiome. The test again is done in the comfort of their own home, and it can be done for children and for adults. And the discount code I'm more than happy to share this with with yourself and the team and the listeners as well.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for this.
Well, we can try to address these. The lack of availability, there is an abundance of foods, in the supermarket aisles. It's, just by empowering ourselves to read the nutrition label, we can compare, okay? But also it's dedicating the time, maybe on weekends or batch cooking, to create at home alternative recipes that are nutrient dense. Now, so I think in this case, the lack of availability, I think it's something that can be addressed, but whether or not the child will eat it can be a bit more frustrating, no doubt. It's something, even personally, I would say that I struggle with from time to time with my younger daughter. And it's, we still make the effort, okay? We still make the effort. In the lunchbox, ensure at least there's a variety of options. If you don't want to introduce something new in the lunchbox, try to offer it at home a few times, so that you can ensure that she or he have tried it, they've liked it, and then you can go on and put it in the lunchbox. It might be a bit trickier to introduce something for the first time in the lunchbox. Better to, offer it at least at home. But, it could be a hit or miss. The only way we will know is trial and error. We have to offer it. We have to be patient. We have to be persistent, not forceful. And definitely not the bribing part, but just to continue. And then if, that food that we prepared in a certain way, they did not like it or refused to eat it, let's try and get creative and try to offer it in a different way. Yeah. Okay, so it does need a bit of time and effort, but, we also need to let go of these high expectations that we have of ourselves as well. The education is crucial. And what's incredible is, even in schools now, they often have activities, events, one-week events that focus on, or just even a whole semester where they talk about the importance of food, the importance of nutrition and diet. We do our part, but rest assured there's that whole environmental influence as well, from schools to the media, to the food industry, to friends, so there's only so much we can control, but keeping in mind that, we do have a big role to play when we provide that education in a fun way. There are plenty of apps nowadays, books targeted towards children on gardening, on, just healthy eating, and saying it to them in a way that we know will, they will grasp it. So for example, if your child plays quite a bit of sports, that's how you can kind of sell the idea of healthy eating is, if you want to continue to play sports, we really want to help you become stronger. We want to help you become fitter. Okay, so let's try and introduce this because this is going to give you the energy. So it's you try and gear your message according to the child, their interests, their level. Maybe younger kids want to build the muscles or they want to run faster or, so it's just trying to target key messages to our children and provide that education. Again, the research is there to show that the parents have such a big influence and children will likely imitate what their parents are doing. So, we start off with ensuring that our plates are, more nutrient dense, let's say, and we start gradually, of course, but then ultimately the child, once it's what they see and what they're accustomed to seeing, then naturally over time, it's what they will role model.
Beautiful. And these are the habits that you instill in your child, and they can take it for a long, long time to their children, and traditions go on. Thank you very much, everyone. It's almost dinner time. So thank you for tuning into our podcast today, and we wish you all happier family time meals. And until we see you in our next Community Talks episode, bon appetit. See you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.